Howdy folks, welcome back to Reseller Niche. My name is Mo, and on this channel we discuss everything to do with reselling, including selling on places like eBay and Amazon. So I got a message in my DMs, and it was on Instagram, and it was asking what this person should sell. It was very open-ended, and I sent them back a couple of responses, but then I thought I'd make a video about it just to talk about what I would sell if it was day one. And I tried to keep this very general. This is for a beginning reseller. If you didn't know anything about anything and you were starting on day one, these are 10 different types of items, 10 categories of items that you could sell on day one, pretty much find at any location, whether it's thrift stores or garage sales or wherever you would be sourcing. So let's get right into it. My top 10 items to thrift on day one for beginners. Number one would be books. Reason being, books are still, for me, even though I live in a relatively busy area, very accessible and relatively cheap. They're also something that you can do well on, whether you're selling on eBay or Amazon, or even you can merchant fulfill or send them to Amazon FBA. So also, depending on where you're located, some people have great thrift stores, some people have no thrift stores, but they have great estate sales or garage sales or church sales, or you're close to a university or library. All of these places will have books no matter what. So I would say if I was telling any person just to start off with one type of item, it would be books. Even though I don't sell as many as I used to, only because it's also, even though on day one you're going to be starting off just trying to figure things out, it's something you can really expand into if you choose to. If you really get into it, you can become one of those people that scans books, and you go through that whole thing where you really expand it just with books alone. So the very first thing I would think of is books. And it's actually a great way to get into eBay as well, not just Amazon FBA. And learn how to use these systems, how to use eBay, how to use Amazon FBA, how to make a shipment. And they're, like I said, very accessible. All right, number two most common thing, and obviously I'm thinking thrift stores when I think this, would be t-shirts. I could have said clothing, but I thought that was a little bit too broad, a little bit too general. The reason I like t-shirts specifically is because, for me at least, they sell year round. I sell t-shirts every single week, pretty much every single day. And there's so many different types of t-shirts, anything from old vintage t-shirts to activewear to repops with the Old Navy, Gap, where they're kind of reproducing old shirts. And you probably have them in your closet too. Just like books, you can probably find them at home. So that would be for someone that doesn't have the funds to really go out there and source. Books and then t-shirts would be great ways to start, because you can just do it from your home right on day one. Storing t-shirts is relatively easy, very light, very easy to ship. You're most likely looking at first class shipping, unless it's super, super heavyweight t-shirts. So that's another thing. T-shirts are great, and they're relatively cheap too. As long as you don't go to some Goodwill boutique, you can pick up a lot of shirts for under $1.
Oh yeah.
All right, number three, and I know these are very general, video games. And video games is such a huge category. One of the first big things I would sell on Amazon FBA was used video games. They do great on eBay also. One thing I would say too, though, because there are a lot of video game resellers out there that know a lot more than I do, don't overlook educational video games. What I mean by that, there's companies like Fisher Price, they call it IXL. They do like a lot of Disney type educational learning games. VTech does a similar thing. So not just obviously your Nintendo, your Xbox games, all of that stuff is great, especially if you have a knowledge base for that. Vintage games are all the rage now, sealed games. But if you don't want to, shell out the, exorbitant amounts that people might be asking right now, don't overlook sealed educational games, sealed PC games, or even used PC games. A lot of the big box ones kind of get overlooked, and people are just looking for those you know, Nintendo titles or Xbox titles, and they overlook the other ones that might just kind of be laying there. PC games for me do really, really well. And like I said, the sealed educational ones do really well too. And those can even be sent into FBA. All right. Number 4, uh, shoes. I do some shoes. I don't do as much as I used to. But shoes is such a huge category. There's plenty of resellers that only do shoes, that only break it down to sneakers within shoes, or they only do, you know, men's dress wear, women's shoes. There's so many different categories. Shoes is a great one, especially if you don't mind doing the work of cleaning the
What is
shoes.
that?
If you don't mind, a lot of the sneakers, looking at model numbers on the back of the tongue, that type of thing. If you don't mind cleaning up old leather shoes, they're awesome. Especially if you live in a state where boots are prevalent. Maybe you've got skiing in your city or your state. Maybe you have a lot of cowboy boots, other hiking boots. All of these things are awesome, big money, especially good materials, good leathers. And obviously you've got, the higher end sneakers, like the sneakerheads selling shoes for ridiculous amounts. If you're into that too, if you have that knowledge base, go for that too. I don't really have that knowledge base. I'm not really selling in places like StockX or anything like that. But even eBay now has, I believe it's if you sell any sneakers or athletic shoes, $100 or more, they will waive the fees for that. So shoes are an awesome thing just to get into. Just shoes alone, there's plenty of excellent resellers doing that and excellent channels. You can look them up. All right, next up, vintage electronics, another huge category. Again, these are super broad, I know that. But for me, I don't really like to test larger items, but I'll pick up a VCR or a VCR DVD combo, something like that. One that I love to pick up is, even if they're not sealed, but like mini Walkman, DVD players, cassette players, mini, even with or without the headset, because you can pick those up separately. I sold, what was it, a vintage, semi-vintage, it was like early 90s Sony Walkman. The package was so beaten up that you could stick your finger right through it. And it sold for 85, I think, or 85 plus shipping, something like that, within like 3 days. And it was a $2.99 pickup. They had actually written $2.99 on the packaging too, so it was pretty bad. So it took me a while to get that out. I'm not even sure if I got that out completely. But anyways, vintage electronics does really, really well. Obviously, VCRs have been, I believe, 100% discontinued by most manufacturers since 2012, 2015, something like that. VHS tapes, even before that, have been discontinued. So these combos are doing really well. VCR, DVD combos, even regular VCRs. And if they have special features on them, look for those too. Make sure, if you can, get the remotes. If you can get the box and manual, even better. But test them at the thrift store or wherever you're getting them from. One thing I do is I keep a cassette tape and a VHS tape in my trunk. So if I don't have, or they don't have access to a tape, I'll run out there and I'll just grab it. And then I'll say, you know what, can I just test this? Then I'll pull one out. You might not want to test anything that's worth anything. I don't even know what I'm testing. I think I'm testing an old like cartoon or something that's beaten up. Tested a VHS rewinder. It was just a rewinder only. And it looked great. It was in the box. I put in a cassette and it ate the cassette. So that would have been like a $50 purchase because it had the box or something like that. It ate the cassette. So make sure you test them first. Okay. Next up, actually this category number 5 leads me into category number 6, VHS tapes in general. Now, it's funny, I've always enjoyed selling VHS. I used to do it mainly on Amazon FBA, only because the odd titles would sell well. Be like Geography, National Geographic, all kinds of weird ones would sell well. I used to do well with BMX VHS, even used ones, motocross, that kind of stuff. But now the big rage is sealed VHS and movies that you've heard of, like, Forrest Gump, Alien, Raiders of the Lost Ark, all that kind of stuff. which, I mean, a year ago, I'm pretty sure I sold all of those movies sealed for like 10 bucks, 15 bucks. Now they're going for hundreds. I'm not sure how long that's going to last. Hopefully it lasts forever. I don't know. But with grading, that kind of thing happens. And I digress. But VHS in general is really good because it's really still accessible. I went to a thrift store yesterday. It was a brand new thrift store. I picked up like 4 or 5 movies. When I was leaving, the cashier said, "Do you like movies?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." So, "Well, we've got a bunch in the back. Do you want to go take a look?" So I went through the back and I found 2 sealed ones. Nothing ridiculous. One was, I think it was Tomorrow Never Dies, James Bond movie, and one was a cartoon, but it was sealed. They're both going for like 30 or 40 bucks. So make sure you go through those old garage sales, estate sales. If you see VHS, pick them up. I guarantee you there's a million videos out there of people finding all these videos. That could be you. Look in your garage. Maybe you have some. So VHS does really, really well. And then one more thing with VHS that I haven't heard people talking about, foreign language VHS. I live here in the US, predominantly most of the VHS is English, maybe Spanish. I found some, I think 5 or 6 VHS cassettes in Tagalog. So I mean, they looked interesting from the 80s, excuse me. And so I picked them up. 3 out of the 5 have already sold. And they sold for, I think, around 25 or so. They're all $1 pickups at Goodwill. So don't overlook foreign language, martial arts, interest, things that people have interest. Like I said, BMX, all these other types of interests, not just your regular, Disney clamshell movie cases, because those are in abundance already. All right, next up, maybe my favorite category to sell in, action figures and dolls. I put these together, and they're giant categories. I could do a video just on dolls alone. I sell everything from your regular G.I. Joe or He-Man to, Transformers to obscure action figures. And what I mean by obscure is things you've never heard of, knockoffs. There are some great knockoffs. There are some knockoffs that actually have become like holy grails. I'll knock off G.I. Joes, knock off He-Man, knock off Star Wars figures, because they made them in different countries. And obviously some companies said, hey, let's try and make our own. Instead of calling it Star Wars, they called it something else. So you can look up those on YouTube. They do exist. So if you can find those, sell those too. One tip when you're looking at Barbie dolls, be very, very careful with assessing if they're vintage or not. A lot of times they reuse the molds. I heard that the 1958 molds were used up until the mid-60s. And one thing to look out for, if you can, is holes in the feet. I believe that is only for the earlier, like first 10 years of Barbie dolls or so. And so that type of thing is something to look out for. So just look them up. Google Lens is your friend when it comes to action figures or dolls. And if you're not sure, just look all over for a year. Sometimes there's multiple years on Barbie dolls. Sometimes it'll be in the back of the neck and on the small of the back. But if you see anything that says like patent pending, made in Japan, holes in the feet, those are probably good signs that it's most likely vintage. But I wouldn't pay ridiculous amounts for them if you see them in a counter at a thrift store behind the counter just because they're behind the counter, because a lot of times they'll just grab it and put it there and put a high price on it. So do your homework. All right, next up, maybe this is a boring category. It's one I love to pick up for both eBay and Amazon FBA. Blank media. And blank media, any kind of blank media does well, I think. VHS cassettes, cassette tapes, mini cassettes, mini DVDs, mini CDs. Those mini cassette tapes do really, really well. And you might, if you ever grab those, you might want to keep them for yourself because they're hard to come by. And I always try and keep one because the mini cassette players do really well as well. Sony made a lot of those. So if you can find those, you can find those any of this blank media sealed will do well on FBA. Even if they're generic companies, a lot of times they'll do well. And if they're not worth much, like $3-4, lock them together and they'll probably do well. Just because you're saying blank VHS, blank, CDs, even the cases. Like you can get lots of 20, 30, 50, 10 cases for CDs. Those do well even. So look up all of this stuff. Um, eBay and Amazon, they do relatively well. All right. Next one, this is the very first thing I ever sent to Amazon FBA was a board game. It was a used copy of Grey's Anatomy. And I'm not even sure if I checked to see if it's complete. So please do that. Check to see if it's complete because you will get busted for that. Also, another thing, if you are sending in used board games to Amazon FBA, two things to remember. One, when you scan at the store, you might take it home and find out you're restricted and not even able to send it in. Unfortunately, that happens with all brands and all types of different things on Amazon. eBay will most likely be a little bit more lenient, so they'll most likely let you sell it. And then the second thing is when it comes to selling board games on Amazon FBA, you want to make sure it's complete, and on the back or in the instructions, it will give you most likely what the total contents of the package are. And if it's not complete, one thing you can kind of get away with sometimes is printing out the instructions. If you can't find those, that would be the one thing that you can get away with, and you can say, acceptable, print it out in instructions, and you can write that in there. Other than that, I wouldn't recommend sending in incomplete anything because you'll just get a return and you'll just lose your money, and who knows what they'll even send back. Used board games are awesome though, especially the older ones. A couple of companies to look up are like Avalon Hill, Games Workshop. Both of these make older games. They're from the 80s onwards, and Avalon Hill makes a lot of bookcase games, a lot of RPG games. These can go for upwards of a couple $100 sometimes. There's a lot of board games companies that I've never even heard of, but I see them. And if you look at them and they look very intricate, very well designed, they have a lot of pieces, pick those up. Generally, those do well, even newer ones. There's games from like 2020, 2021 that are very intricate, a lot of pieces, but they do really, really well. So pick those up, check for completeness. If you're someone that likes to go in and check for completeness, this is the category for you. I know there's people that go in there and they check and they break up the board games. They'll buy pieces, they'll buy games that are missing pieces, they'll put them together and they'll make games, or they'll part them out. So if you're interested in parting out things, board games is a category for you. People part out Monopoly, Life, Scrabble, all kinds of stuff. I mean, I've seen people parting out dominoes. I mean, if you get the right domino, they're worth something. So board games is a huge category, one that I would recommend to anybody because they're in every thrift store. Sometimes the boxes are beaten up, but if they're complete, there's usually a buyer for them. So just do your research and see what they're worth. Okay, number 10, plush, stuffed animals. This is a category that I used to do a lot more of, and I'm getting back into a bit. Plush is good for multiple reasons. One, every thrift store, garage sale, church sale has stuffed animals. Kids get them and they toss them. So that's number one. They're made in abundance. That's why there's so many of them. I would double check because for every Build-A-Bear or Dandy stuffed animal that's worth $50, $100, there's a bunch that are worth $4 or $5. So double check. Also, you might want to double check things like completeness. Does it come with a hat? If it has one of those ones that plays music or talks, does that work? And can you even change the battery to make it work? Sometimes you can't. That kind of stuff. A lot of the Hallmark ones are like that. But some of them aren't. Some of them you can change the batteries or whatever, and you're good to go. So one note is that one of the most expensive ones I ever sold, I'd never heard of. It looked like a kind of an anime type figure character, cartoon character. It turned out to be a South Korean TV show character. It was oversized, very animated face, and it sold for like 80 bucks. It was huge too. It was like 36 inches, 40 inches, something like that. So look out for the oversized ones, and more extravagant looking, more kind of outlandish looking, the better. So like I said, this was an anime character, I believe. I'm still not even sure, but it sold right away for like 80 bucks. So anyways, look out for those. So I hope you enjoyed that. That was 10 types of items that you could find at pretty much any thrift store, garage sale, estate sale, church sale, for relatively cheap and in abundance to get you started on your reselling journey. I'm going to make a video, hopefully, on each one of these categories to break it down, to give a little bit more in-depth information so you can see exactly what within each of these categories is worth buying or not. But until next one, thanks for watching. Have a good one, guys. Bye.
Bye!